Welcome to the Pop Revolution, the show where we dive into a new song every month and show you how it was made from beginning to end, writing all the way to production. I'm your host, Nathan Larsen, and I am excited to dive deeper into this month's tune, Vesperum. If you have not yet, make sure you check out the music video where you can listen to this tune right here. But here is a quick little teaser for you in case you need some motivation. In this first episode, we'll be going through a bit of an overview of the tune from the arranging and writing standpoint. Obviously, there are no lyrics in this tune, as it's just an instrumental track, which does simplify some things. I don't have to worry about making sure my melody is matching the text, and vice versa. Instead, I was able to focus entirely on creating a compelling piece using cool textures and more broad musical gestures. Basically wanted to create something that felt like this inspirational kind of sound that you might expect to hear in a touching promo video or inspirational video. My writing process is pretty much constantly changing and morphing depending on what I'm working on, and in this particular piece, I did a lot more chunking, which basically just means I worked on sections at a time and focused less on the overarching trajectory of the entire work. So rather than coming up with the entire song with maybe just piano, I would write a small section, produce that section independently of the others, and then move on when I felt like I had produced enough to be content and happy with how it sounded. Now, that's not to say it was finished, it was just produced enough that I had a very good idea of what vibe I was going for in that particular section. So I had keys, drums, and bass for sure recorded, and still had some other things that I would need to add later on. When you listen to this tune, it definitely is a sectional piece from the perspective of musical form. So it isn't really in this verse, chorus type form, but instead it kind of just goes from point A to a semi-long transition to B, and then comes back to A at the very end. So, in the grand scheme of things, the form of this song is quite simple. Here is a little diagram to illustrate the overall form of this tune. As you can see, the intro starts with soft electric keys, some electric pads, bass, and piano. This is A, and it's all in the key of D major. And then the progression repeats, but this time with drums and a full band sound. This is A prime, or in the diagram, it's A with an asterisk, which basically just means it's the same as A in a general sense, but there's some distinguishing factors that are different. So, for example, the chord progression's the same, has the same general piano melody, but this time there are drums, electric guitar, acoustic guitar, some vocal pad stuff, and a more foundational bass part. Whereas in the intro, bass is almost more of a melodic part instead of playing the roots of chords, but we'll get more into that in episode 3 when we talk about bass and drums. This whole A to A prime thing really boils down to repeating something in a new way to make sure it's still interesting and moving the song forward. Motion is a really big concept in music. You want to make sure that your music is always moving forward, and so rather than always coming up with a new chord progression or melody to keep things moving forward and keeping things fresh, you can simply repeat things, but do it in a more interesting way in terms of what instruments you have, whether you have drums or not, or all sorts of other ways. Essentially, the more creative you can be in making it sound different, but, the same, the better. Be creative. At the 1 minute mark, we hit what I call the transition section, which starts with the piano part that's just outlining the chord progression that we're about to hear, but all of this is happening over a pedal tone in the bass. Pedal tone just means a bass part that's unmoving. So the chord progression might be changing in the piano as it's outlining more than just one chord, but the bass note remains constant and unchanging. The idea is that, like when you use the pedal on a piano and it sustains everything, a pedal tone sustains one specific tone or note for a period of time. So if I were to create a chord chart for this moment, it would look a lot like this. As you can see, you have chords like A over D. The slash mark just simply means that the bass plays the note on the right side. So every chord is over D, therefore D is the pedal tone. In short, what they really accomplish musically is a sense of tension, because it almost feels like the musical motion is wanting to move forward, but the bass is not allowing it. So when the bass finally does change and starts going along with this new progression, it feels like a moment of release, and all this tension has kind of led up to that moment. The transition section lasts for about 30 seconds, as it has a cool moment just jamming in B minor, which is the relative minor to D, which we'll be getting more into in the next episode, and then it all builds up to the moment where everything kind of explodes, changes back into D major again, and becomes a lot more victorious and more like a jam session. Drums are wailing out, electric guitars going at it, and everyone is of course just having a jolly good time. This is the moment in this theoretical and totally made up inspirational video that the main character has officially overcome the struggle and is winning, or whatever. That is the B section, which lasts for another 30 seconds or so. Then it moves back to the A section, where everything basically culminates and ends in this beautiful moment with strings and a beautiful piano line again, and it's supposed to just give you all the feels. As you can see from the perspective of form, this piece is really quite simple, and what makes it work really well boils down to good execution from a production and arranging standpoint. What the individual instruments are doing and how they work together really pulls everything together in this piece to give it the powerful vibe that I wanted. So the combination of electric piano, pulsing synths, guitars, and drums all come together and create this cohesive piece. But of course, we'll be diving into all of that in the following episodes on the Pop Revolution. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe so you can be a part of what we're doing, be staying up to date with each episode as we'll continue showing you the inside scoop on how this song, Vesperum, was done. Next up, we'll be diving deeper into the arrangement and talking about chord progressions and all sorts of other cool things. Of course, you can buy this song on iTunes right here, so you can have it with you everywhere you go, and of course, that goes a long way in supporting us so we can continue putting out these series and showing you how to make your own music better. Be sure to leave any questions or comments that you may have below, and have yourself a lovely day. Pajow.